This is Taylor Rohr for Rockingham Community College, SEC 110, and this presentation is called Wireless for the Common Man. Before we get any further into the presentation, we first need to establish some objectives for the presentation. We're going to discuss and understand the basics of WEP, WPA, WPA2, SSID, and then we're also going to discuss antenna extenders such as the Cantenna and the Wi-Fi. And then to end the presentation, we're going to discuss very briefly cracking software which can be used to crack wireless connections by using blackjack and aircrack. The first one we're going to talk about is WEP. WEP stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy, and it was defined by the IEEE 802.11 standard. What WEP does is it encrypts data to provide data security. However, it is very weak and has the potential to be cracked. Now, the WEP protocol has actually been under scrutiny for not being as secure as it was initially intended to be. And WEP is vulnerable due to weaknesses in the way the encryption algorithms are employed. These weaknesses allow the algorithms to potentially be cracked in actually as few as 5 minutes using available PC software such as backtrack and aircrack, which we're going to discuss later in the presentation. And it's for those reasons that WEP is one of the most vulnerable protocols available for security. Next, we're going to discuss WPA, which stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. Now, WPA was implemented, or was a technique which was an improvement over WEP, but itself it was not fully secure, and unfortunately an attacker could simply run a brute force attack against a WPA network to discover any passphrase. And if the passphrase was, for example, 14 characters or more, it could become very time consuming. But at the same time, it was still, and is still, not impossible to crack the passphrase. And it was originally designed to target both enterprise and consumers. Eventually, several years after WPA2 was released, WPA2 was released, which was a new method that is still considered to be the most secure. And it's a new encryption and authentication technique that employs features of IPsec, and to this date no real-world attack has compromised a properly secured or properly configured WPA2 wireless network. However, within the coming years, there is a program being developed called aircrack on steroids, which is going to be used to crack any WPA2 encryption key. And next, we're going to talk about the SSID. Now, I have heard that SSID stands for Service Set Identifier, and I've also heard it referred to as a Station Set Identifier. And what it does, it differentiates one wireless network from another. An interesting way to think of an SSID is that it is similar to the name of a work group. The SSID is composed of a sequence of alphanumeric characters such as letters or numbers, and can have a maximum length of 32 characters. Next, we're going to discuss very briefly antenna extenders. And the first one we are going to discuss is the cantenna, which is a directional waveguide antenna, which is used to increase the range of or discover different wireless networks. And here we have an image that I pulled from Google Images, which shows a super cantenna. Kind of resembles maybe a telescope just a little bit. However, you can see the cables or the cable coming out of the bottom, which is connected to an antenna on the inside. And next we're going to briefly discuss the Wi-Fi, which is actually an antenna made out of Asian cookware or similar metallic reflective items. I've actually seen some Google images where some people have taken old DirecTV satellite dishes and have used them and turned them in to Wi-Fi's. And here you can see an image of a Wi-Fi that has not been properly assembled yet. As you can see, all the pieces are laying out waiting to be assembled in the correct order. And next we're going to discuss very briefly certain pieces of software that are used to crack wireless. And the first one is called blackjack, and it's a Linux-based CD or bootable CD, as I've seen it commonly used, and it is commonly used for penetration testing and wireless hacking. And the last piece of software we are going to briefly discuss is AirCrack, which is simply a set of tools for auditing wireless networks, and it consists of the following programs: Aero Dump, Air Replay, and AirCrack and Air Decap. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there is a new cracking software coming out that's going to be called AirCrack on steroids, which is going to be aimed at cracking WPA2. So as you can see, we have discussed and we have understood the basic concepts of WEP, WPA2, WPA2, SSID, antenna extenders such as the cantenna and the Wi-Fi, and we've briefly discussed some cracking software such as blackjack and AirCrack. And this concludes the presentation, Wireless for the Common Man by Taylor Rohr. I hope you have maybe learned a few interesting things about WEP, WPA2, WPA, and also the SSID, and maybe you can use this information to further explore wireless networking. Thank you.